What's up guys, welcome back to the Drone Camps channel. I'm Justin Davis and today I have something for you new from EMAX. You've seen it here before on the channel. I had the EMAX bind and fly version, and you can fly this little quad on various different transmitters out there, but you have to have a transmitter outside of buying the plug and play version or the bind and fly version. So EMAX has taken it upon themselves to make up a ready to fly version for us, and mainly for the beginners out there. So this video is primarily for the absolute beginners, first guys getting into FPV. If you're new to FPV, you've probably heard of my Drone Camps channel. I've been around for years helping people inside beta flight and do complete builds on quadcopters and other types of RC vehicles here on the channel, all kinds of stuff, airplanes, RC cars, whatever. But today we're talking about something that's versatile for indoors or outdoors, something that you can fly in the winter months close to home or inside your home, which is really neat. Now, they have developed this product that is an all-in-one system, and I haven't really seen this before as such an all-inclusive package. And what's really cool about it is it does also include goggles, and we're going to talk about the goggles, and I'll fire those up and show them to you as well. We're also going to talk about the options that comes along with it, the specs on the quadcopter, and I'm going to show you some flight footage. I think you're going to be really impressed with the 1S capability of this little quadcopter with brushless motors, and it does have special push-on props, which are quite different than some of the ones we've seen in the past. And I've seen other companies start to kind of copy that type of prop already. A very efficient and interesting design, mainly because it's an inverted motor on the bottom, which is going to give you almost zero prop wash on the airframe, which is really nice. All that translates to a really smooth flying quadcopter and a really gentle beginner experience for just getting into FPV. And the first thing that you're going to be dealing with as a new person getting into FPV is just getting used to wearing the goggles on your face, looking at the video screen and actually seeing what's out in front of you and avoiding that as you're learning to fly. Now, I always tell people to start out flying a little quad like this. A little 1S quad for indoors is perfect. You want to learn how to fly at line of sight first with the transmitter that comes along with it. We're going to talk about how that's set up as well. I'm going to show you all the switches, but learn how to fly at line of sight first and then graduate up to FPV later. And you're going to find out that your sticks are going to feel a little more familiar to you as you get into FPV, knowing how to fly this quadcopter line of sight. Because if you ever have to take those goggles off and fly at line of sight, you can bring it back home. But let's go ahead outside now and do some flying. I'm going to do some line of sight flying with you. We'll do a line of sight flight test, and we'll also do some FPV with this in different locations, and we'll have some fun with the Tinyhawk, and I'll show you how good it is on the stock transmitter, and I'll also show you a comparison of what it can fly like on a more expensive transmitter. So this will be all-in-one review right here for you guys. Enjoy. Okay, so if you're brand new to FPV, this is going to be a great video because I'm going to show you how this transmitter works, how it flies versus a more expensive transmitter. But this one is all about the RTF bundle, and I'm going to show you that it does have 3 modes on the right switch. You're going to have stability, horizon, and the last mode there is going to be acro for your acro trainer mode. And they do have it dialed down quite a bit in this for beginners. So the acro mode is not quite as sensitive, but you can change that later inside Betaflight, which is really, really cool. And you have your little USB port here, which we're going to talk about a little bit later in this review. But on the left-hand side, we have a beeper. So you should be able to hear the quad beeping. If you lose it over in the bushes and you have an issue where you can't find it, you have a beeper there, which is really nice. And that's the second position on the left-hand side. That is disarm all the way down, and all the way towards you is going to be your arm switch. So now I'm in stability mode. I can go ahead and come up, and this is where most beginners should start, right in your own backyard. If you have as much space as I do here, you can absolutely train yourself how to fly a quadcopter. One of the most important things for beginners to learn is probably the nose in flying, because when you're flying nose in, everything is opposites. When I push left on the stick, it's going to go right to my right, and vice versa. If I push to the right, it's going to go left. And that's that nose in flying right there. And that's almost hands off the stick. You could trim it out a little bit, but look at that. It's really, really stable for beginners. And that's what this quad's all about. And this transmitter does feel softer than my original settings on my Tyrannus radio. So it's going to fly a lot softer for the beginners, because the beginners start out making a lot of really hard maneuvers with their, I'm going to test out those prop guards. They do a lot of stick maneuvers, stick movement. So if you do a lot of stick movement in the very beginning, that can get you into a lot of trouble. So they did soften up the controls a lot for the new guys, which is going to make a big difference in your flying. Later on, like I said, you can change that sensitivity, but start off in this stability mode with your switch all the way out to the outside, then move into something we call horizon mode. And horizon mode is just going to give you a little more pitch. It's going to let the quad go a little faster, as you can see, and I can get more trouble in horizon mode. But the cool thing about horizon mode, when you're ready for it, it's going to allow you to do this, kind of like stabilized type flips. And these are fairly manual flips compared to something like a push button flip on a toy drone. This is completely different, but it still gives me that stability when I come back around out of my flip, and it flies really nice in horizon mode. Some people even race in horizon mode, but what you ultimately want to do is you want to get to the point where you're flying in acro, and that's what this little guy is all about. It's the ultimate kind of acro trainer. So right now I'm in the position all the way toward us, and now I can do acro flips, and the mode is set to be pretty low, as you could tell. You see, that was a huge flip. It actually has a higher flip rate in horizon mode than it does in acro mode. So if you want to do really tight flips, you raise the super rates inside Betaflight, and that's going to let you do a tighter roll. Right now it's set pretty big. Look at that. It's almost like a rainbow type of flip. So they do have it dialed down a lot for the beginners. Look at that. I'm going to go back to horizon. We're just going to compare the flip rate in horizon. So a lot tighter flip for my horizon mode, and those prop guards are working. And the greatest thing about this is, I'm going to go back into stability mode now, and look at this flight characteristic of this quad is really stable and smooth and predictable. Look at that. I'm just going to bring it in, little hands off hover there. Really cool little quad. And one of the reasons why it's so stable is because it does have inverted motors, and the inverted motors allow almost pretty much zero prop wash. And what happens when you have zero prop wash is that a lot of the airflow is being directed underneath the body of the quad, and normally we do have some prop wash on the arms of our quads because you have issues with the props pushing air down onto the frame. So that creates a little bit of turbulence for the flight controller, and the flight controller, usually you can tune that out. Sometimes if you have a really cheap prop, it's going to have some vibration. So that's one thing to think about. EMAX has tuned all of that out for us, and they have a really smooth flying quadcopter right out of the box. And that's what this RTF version is all about for the beginners. But let's go ahead now. Let's charge up all the batteries that I have, the 1S 450 milliamps, some of the EMAX, and some of the LDARC batteries, and we'll go out and do some FPV with this little guy. I think you guys are going to like what you see. It's very smooth and perfect for beginners. Already a 5-star setup for the beginner FPV pilots. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to show you guys with the Tinyhawk RTF version is stability mode. This is the most important mode to start out with. If you buy this and you're brand new, please start out in stability mode. Just go up and cruise around and enjoy the experience of FPV before you start trying to make those wild and crazy videos to share with your friends. Start out in that first mode, and you can really cruise almost like a DJI type drone. You are going to see some feedback in the video as in comparison to something like DJI, but look at the amount of control here I still have in stability. I can still fly through little tiny gaps and really have a lot of fun starting out. Once you master stability mode, you can move up to the next level up, which is going to be horizon. It's going to allow you to do flips, but still have that stability you're looking for as a beginner. And I am seeing a little bit of feedback there, and that's because I'm going in between things. And remember, this is a 25 milliwatt transmitter. A video transmitter on here is one of the lowest out there. When you move up to other quads, you can move up to some 200 milliwatt and above, and that's going to get you a really solid penetration through objects and things like that. But right here, I'm in acro mode, and look how much faster the Tinyhawk is in acro mode. Now let's go ahead and do some flying with the non-stock transmitter that you would have to purchase a transmitter. This is one that's going to cost you $100 or more. So right now I'm flying on the X10S, and that's about a $400 transmitter with some serious aluminum gimbals, and really responsive, more reactive, and I'm able to get away with a little more because this is kind of what I'm used to flying. This is video footage from my original Tinyhawk review, and when it originally came out, it didn't have the ready to fly option available. So still the same type of flight characteristics on that quad as you do have on the RTF version, because it is the same exact quad, and it flies really stable in stability. Also, freestyle is really fun out in the park. You can have a lot of fun with this quad. It really is a ton of fun to fly in acro. So let's go back into the studio now and take a little closer look. All right, welcome back to the studio. Now let's go ahead and take a little closer look at the RTF version. But for those of you who haven't seen the Bind & Fly $99 version before, I'll just go ahead and unbox that for you real quick. It does have a little more portable case, and the Tinyhawk sits right in here. You get some EMAX stickers along with it, some extra hardware, and a battery connector cable, as well as the world's smallest screwdriver, which I love. You have a little extra foam pit here for extra batteries. If you end up buying more and want to put in there, you can do that. It also comes with one 450 milliamp. This is a 1S HV battery, and you'll see HV right there, 4.35 volt at 80C with a burst of 160, and that's going to get you about a 4-minute flight time on the Tinyhawk, which is a really good flight time for a tiny whoop style quadcopter. And you get this USB charger, which does 4 batteries at once on those 2.0 connectors, and it'll also charge HVs or standard LiPos at 4.20 volts. But that's the $99 kit. And now let me show you the RTF kit. I think you're gonna like some of the changes that they did for this one. They made this one a little bit better value. First of all, the case is a little bit larger. It does have a nice shoulder strap that comes along with it. It is adjustable with 2 buckles right there, and it does have 2 zippers which go around both ways. And let me just open this up for you guys and spin it around, and I will show you the new 4-blade Avon props. I got a couple sets of those extra with mine. You might get these along with yours. You get a welcome get started piece of information here that's about learning to fly, beginner tips, which is really nice for the new guys. It talks about throttle, yaw, pitch tilt, back and forth, which way the left stick turns the quadcopter on the yaw axis, and the throttle for up and down. On the right stick, it gives you pitch tilt back and forth, and sort of like your elevator and ailerons on an airplane. And you get roll from side to side. So that would be your ailerons, and pitch is going to be your elevator on an airplane. But on the back of it here, you have a little short get started tutorial, removing all the contents, of course. Attach the 2 antennas onto the Fpv goggles, as they are right here. These 2 are your diversity antennas, which is going to give you a little bit better penetration out there. Now you're going to charge up the battery pack, and there is a battery pack that I got, one of the 2200 batteries in my kit. Now you might not get these with your RTF. You'll notice I have a piece of tape on there, and the reason is because mine kept popping out and the battery would fly out, so I had to tape it down. So maybe my little latch right there is not quite up to par, but you'll put this in on the positive side up. They do have a positive part here, and you just find the positive part on your battery. Make sure that the positive side goes up, press that down a little bit, and it'll snap into place. And I just added this piece of packing tape on the end to make sure it didn't punch out while I was flying. But once you have the battery in there, you can put it in the very top port of the goggles right here, and then your goggles are going to turn on. Bring your antennas up for the best reception, and the battery pack fits in this little slot right back here, and it is not going anywhere. But this wire runs up over the top strap, and they do actually have a bit of a guide right here on the strap. And one thing I have to mention about the straps, these straps, they look nicer than some of the other straps that I've seen on even more expensive goggles. And these are beginner goggles, guys. They are what we call the box style goggle. It has that cool EMAX logo in the front there. You have these little sliders on each side, and that's for changing the screen distance in and out. Depending on how nearsighted or farsighted you are, you can adjust that. Now, one thing I did notice about this set of goggles is that they also used really nice foam on here. It almost looks like some type of fleece fabric. Just get a little close-up of that. This looks a lot nicer than even my favorite Sky Zone goggles, the Sky O2s. You can see that full screen in there. That's going to give you a nice wide screen view. And one other thing I did notice right away when I turned this set of goggles on, they do have a built-in fan. This little module right here, and it has vents on the very top. This is actually a built-in fan to remove some of the moisture inside here, because sometimes when you're sweating during the summer, condensation builds up on the inside and then you can't see where you're flying. So very important for most of these types of goggles to have some type of built-in fan. And some of the cheaper ones don't have fans, just to let you know. But I like the way these look. They look pretty decent. They're very clean. And the only thing that I'm missing on here would be a DVR. And that's probably going to be the my only downside of this review, is that these EMAX goggles don't seem to have a DVR, unless it's somewhere hidden there that I just do not see. But you do have full capabilities to change channels and bands, and you have diversity on here as well, which is kind of a nice beginner outfit. But eventually you're going to want to record your own videos, so you will need some type of external DVR to do that. And you can do that. I will put a link down below for those, and you can use a little micro SD card to record your videos too, and then you can put them in your computer and share on social media. And now the transmitter that comes with it, it is running on 2.4 gigahertz, and it only has 2 buttons on the very top. You don't have a ton of options for this particular transmitter. It is primarily used for this quad. But the good news is that this has a ton of range. I did a range test for you guys, and I was out there at least a couple football fields. I was able to fly all the way across the park. So I have to say the range rating would be a 5 stars for the Tinyhawk RTF. I was able to get way out there. Now, one thing that I did notice about the sticks was that the sticks are a little softer feeling, and that's partially because of the tune, but also because of the plastic feeling gimbals that we have here. Generally, I fly with the Hall gimbals, and those are aluminum, and these are going to be more of a plastic ball type of transmitter stick. So you can see it rotates around, kind of like a pool ball. So not quite as precise as, say, something like a $99 transmitter or a $200 transmitter is going to get you, which eventually you can upgrade to later if you decide to. But you have your trim buttons here. You have a little speaker right here that's going to beep. If you press and hold, it's going to go ahead and turn on for you. And the light is a little bit hard to see outside. You can see there's a little tiny green light in the center of that button right there. So the only way you're really going to know when it's outside that it's on, you'll hear that beep and that prompt. And back here is where we have our battery, and that's hiding just underneath here. So another rechargeable 2200 milliamp battery. It should get you over 5 hours of flight time. And it looks very similar to the cousin X Lite. And actually the X Lite does fit in this slot right here. Look at that, it's perfect. So if you upgrade to the X Lite later, your X Lite will fit perfectly in the RTF package, which is what I really recommend most people do eventually, because this transmitter can bind up to multiple quadcopters. When you do get a collection going, this will grow along with your collection. And you can also fly some long range receivers on the back of this as well, because if you take this off, you have a little miniature long range R9 module that can go on there. It's called, I believe it's called the R9 Lite. And then you can fly some long range on your micros or your 5-inch quads and go out there and really do some exploring. But I'm happy to say that I am stoked about how far this transmitter does get it out there. The range is really, really good. The sticks could probably feel a little bit better, but for this price point, we can't really ask for really expensive Hall style gimbals. These are really expensive. This entire radio is an upwards of $400. So for this price point, this is a good start, something to start out with. And it doesn't have any computer display on here, so it's going to be way easier for you to be able to just charge up and take it outside and use it. And that's the whole point of this package, is to be able to turn everything on and start FPVing right away. When you make the order for this, by the way, I would also recommend ordering yourself like a 5-pack or more of these batteries, because it is really addictive to fly. Once you fly one battery, you're going to want to fly more batteries. So it would be cool if EMAX decided to release say a battery bundle version of this as well. But I think they did a decent job on making the transmitter feel good in my hands. It's as big as the X Lite, so it's not too small, and it doesn't really feel like a toy in my hands, and that's a big benefit. And by the way, it does have 3 position switches, and I need to show you those real quick. On the right hand side, and it's still on. And I don't know if it has a failsafe off or not, but if you press and hold it, it should turn off. So now it's off. This is a 3-position switch right here, and this is going to be your stability mode. In the middle is going to be horizon, and acro all the way towards you. And right here, you're in disarm. You're going to have beeper right here, and all the way forward is to arm the quad. So start off in stability mode. Sticks, usually your sticks, you want them facing all the way away from you when you first power on everything. Power on the transmitter first, and then the quad. And flip that switch, and you're ready to fly. Now I also got 2 sets of different types of props. You get an owner's manual here with the disclaimers and some information on the ready to fly bundle that we have here. I'm just going to go ahead and open this up for you. It's got a table of contents. It's got information on your F4 flight controller in here, and that is running the Maytech firmware. If you're looking to change this, if you want to upgrade the firmware on this quad, you want to use what we call the boot button, and the boot button is on the very top of the board. You're going to press and hold that while you're selecting the target firmware to reflash this board. That's going to be a more advanced feature that you're going to get into a little bit later, but they also have information in here on changing the VTX inside Betaflight OSD, which is really great. You can go in and change any of your VTX settings, channels and bands using smart audio. So that's really cool. Before you power up the quad, you can press the stick over here to the left and this stick over to the right, and it should take you inside the menus, and you will be able to change. It says pitch up actually. So yaw left and pitch up. This is your pitch stick on the right hand side. That will take you in, and you can change all types of options in here, as well as some of the OSD settings. But you also have OSD inside Betaflight, which is going to show you all of your on-screen telemetry, like your battery voltage. Very important that you don't just totally kill your batteries. Now also, what I think is really cool in comparison to the original bind and fly version of this quad is that they added a little better value charger on here. It does charge 2.0 connector style batteries and the original Whoop style batteries. So a lot of those are going to be 1S, and these are very, very easy to set up. You're just going to plug this into whatever USB port you want on your computer or onto the wall, and then you're going to plug in the battery like this, and you're going to see that the light lights up, and you're going to have your battery charge. If it goes out or goes solid, I believe it was a solid light, that lets you know that it has a full charge. It also has 2 different types of switches on here for charging. You can make it charge at 0.2 amps, or you can make it charge a little bit faster at 0.6 amps. But I really like that they did include a 6-port charger on here, so you can charge up to 6 of those little batteries at once. I would probably like to have about 12 of these batteries myself to get out and fly. And the quad itself hasn't changed. This is the exact same quad as the one that comes in the bind and fly package. Obviously, they didn't do any modifications on the frame at all. I don't see anything different here. It has the same connector, the same battery tray right here, which fits all of your 1S 450s. I probably wouldn't fly anything heavier than that on this quad. Now, one thing that I do like about this a lot, like I was explaining earlier, it does have inverted motors. The props are push-on props, so you don't need any tools. You do have 75 millimeters here from front to back, and it is kind of a stretch X design, what we call the standard stretch X. But the frame, it's fairly durable, so I'm going to say, I would say 4.5 stars for the frame. The last test that I did with this one, I broke one of these little spars right here. One of them snapped, but on this flight test, I did test it around playground. I didn't go into the playground too much because there was some people there, but fly around the edges, and I did actually have some pretty hard hits on this quad, and it came home in one piece. And if you watch my channel, I fly these super extra hard for you guys. Now, you also have a couple things here on the very top. You have a button here where you can change your VTX channels. This is the port for connecting to your Betaflight, and the bind button is actually a little bit hard to find. If you are going to bind this up to another transmitter, the bind button is on the very bottom, right there. And you might think it would be this button, but that's not a bind button, and there's another button back here. You see that little button in there? That's actually the boot button for updating the firmware. So I originally thought that this button was for binding, because normally you'd have the bind button on top, and it's actually on the bottom there where I showed you before. So you have 3 different types of buttons on this quad. And it's also rocking some 3 amp all-in-one ESCs, and the flight controller and ESC are actually built into this board. They are all one piece right there. So you can see that layer right there. That layer right there is your flight controller and your ESCs together. So don't try to run this on 2S. You will absolutely fry this little guy if you plugged in a 2S battery. It'll just immediately smoke on you. Now, one other thing I think is pretty cool is that they do have the motor wires recessed along this little ridge right here, and you can push them down even further. A really nice thing about these motors is that they are plug-and-play motors. So if you burn out a motor, or one of your motors stops working or starts twitching, you figure out that it's not the ESC, it's the motor. You just unplug this one and plug a new one in. No soldering needed. And that's really one of the biggest benefits for a beginner FPV pilot. And the camera on here is a CMOS 600 TVL camera, and it actually did look pretty good. There's a little bit of tilt right here, you can see, but there's not a whole lot of protection around the camera. If you wanted to build some type of cage around it, or maybe do some type of mod, you could probably protect this camera a little more, because I have actually hit these cameras and knocked them off their mounts. You can put them back on, but you can see in there it's connected just behind that little wall right there. That little plastic piece is holding it in its spot, and it's fairly rigid, but you can knock them off. So one thing to think about with these cameras, I wish they were just a little more recessed in this quadcopter design. But I think they are off to something really special here. As far as the ready to fly bundle goes, we have something that is going to be just plug and play, and that is what we've been wanting in the industry for quite some time. And you also get the world's smallest screwdriver in this bundle as well, and your extra hardware and your extra battery cable, which is really important. If you break this one off or something happens to it, you have some extras in there for backup. Some extra hardware, as well as standoffs, some rubber grommets. The little rubber grommets that dampen the flight controller are really easy to lose. So if you find yourself taking this apart, a few of these might fall on the floor, but it's nice to have extras. All right, so some final thoughts on this quad. I mean, I have to say that I think the RTF package is a great step forward for beginners. Anybody that's looking to get into FPV, this is a really foolproof way to get into it. The charger is really simple. The transmitter is already set up. You don't have to bind it up yourself. You don't have to set up all the switches and everything inside Betaflight. You don't even have to have a computer to be able to fly Betaflight for one of the first times in the hobby, which is really a nice option for people who just want to get out there, have that FPV experience, and also something like an acro trainer. So it kind of has a lot of different capabilities: indoor, outdoor, acro trainer, and stability trainer. So when you first get into it, this is great also for line of sight, because you have prop guards all the way around the motors. I wouldn't recommend flying it around people indoors. Probably fly it, if you're a young person, fly this when no one's home, because if you hit your sister's hair with these motors, it's going to suck some hair up in these motors really hard, and your mom might have to take some scissors to her hair to remove them from these motors. So one thing to think about, don't get in trouble there. But I like the fact that it does have a 1S battery, which is also very cheap and accessible. So accessibility, it's going to be a 5 out of 5 for that as well. And the fun factor, like I said, 5 out of 5. Performance is maybe let's go ahead and say 4.5 out of that, and we'll give a total overall rating for the RTF version at about a 4.6 total rating for this. So not the highest rating in the world, but also not the lowest on the channel either. So it still scores really, really high. And I think it's going to be a good bet for anyone trying to get into the hobby. If you want something that's just plug and play, this is it. No setting up switches, playing around inside Betaflight, and installing drivers and all that good stuff. So I think what they have here is an easy bet for the first part of 2019 until they come out with the 2S version. But start out with this one, work your way up to the 2S version, and go even faster. But thanks again for watching this review, guys. Don't forget to make your comments down below, because we're giving away one of these Tinyhawks right here on the channel, and we're also giving away this really ripping 6S Mephisto race drone. So HGLRC Ripper, 6S Ripper. Both of these are going to be up for grabs, so you might win one of these coming up on January 2nd. Make a comment quick and share the video with a friend. I'd appreciate that. But thanks again, guys. I'm Justin Davis. I'll see you on the next one. Take care.